Hallelujah. Thank Yahweh for the day. And we'll be here for a while. Couldn't shorten this anymore. I tried. But I want to talk about rebuilding the temple. And in light of kind of a types and shadows thing. So we're going to be basically in the book of Ezra. I want to cover 3 chapters. So we'll see how that works. First, a little bit of background so that we can understand what's going on when we get into the book of Ezra. In 609 was the beginning of the 70-year captivity of Judah. Israel is already dispersed, and Judah was all that remained. So remember, the kingdom had been divided. There were 2 tribes, Judah and Benjamin, and then the 10 tribes were the northern tribes, and they were already dispersed. And Judah, because she didn't listen to Yahweh when he said, don't be like your sister, is now beginning her 70-year captivity under Babylonian rule. Now, it began in 609 when Babylon first conquered Jerusalem, but they warred. It's like, I conquered you, now you owe me tribute. And then they would rebel, and there was battles going. But they were still under Babylonian rule. So in 586, Nebuchadnezzar was done with them, and he went in, and this is when the temple was destroyed. They were taken into captivity in waves, and you'll see that they return in waves. So Jeremiah 29:10 says, "For thus saith Yahweh, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you, and causing you to return to this place." So this was some time before they actually went into captivity that this prophecy through Jeremiah came forth. So we see they were in captivity for 70 years. In 538 through 537, the proclamation to all Jews to rebuild the temple, and we'll look at that. In 535, Jews returned, reconstruction of temple begins. In 530, work is stopped. In 520, 519, building of temple resumes. In 516, finished construction of temple. And in 445, building the wall. Now, in case any of you don't know that, before the Christian era, our AD, BCE, I don't know what initials they use now, it was a countdown. It counted down. So I'm giving you 609, and then it's more current at 445. Okay, so that's just a timeline a little bit so you know, and I'll probably restate these dates as we start. So they were in captivity for 70 years, and that's where we'll pick up. We're going to focus in Ezra 3 through 6, but we got to go into chapter 1 to get a little start up so we know what's going on. So in Ezra chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, it says, "Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of Yahweh by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled." That's scripture that I said in Jeremiah 29:10. "Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, Yahweh God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth. and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judea. Okay, so here, after the 70 years of captivity, Yahweh his people don't revolt and win their freedom. Yahweh puts it on the heart of a foreign king to build his temple. So you need to know, before the wall, which we've talked about a lot lately, was the temple. Picking it up at verse 3, who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of Yahweh, God of Israel. He is the God, which is in Jerusalem. And whosoever remains in any place where he sojourned, let the men of his place help him with silver and with gold and with goods and with beasts, besides the freewill offering for the house of Elohim that is in Jerusalem. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites with all them whose spirit Yahweh had raised to go up to build the house of Yahweh, which is in Jerusalem. Okay, so what's happening here? Yahweh moved on the heart of a foreign king who held captivity the people of Judah and Benjamin, the Jews. And he now decrees. He just doesn't decree, he has it put in writing that they will be to go and build this house, this temple. And he's asking, now he doesn't do it, he's asking the people who are the Jews, who among you would like to go and do this? Is free to go. And anybody who decides to stay, this is your charge. You give them gold, silver, animals, anything to support them and to support the work. So you'll note that all the Jews aren't leaving. The Jews that are leaving are who? The one who Yahweh put it on their heart to build the house. That's all that leaves. We're going to go to chapter 3 now. I would encourage everybody to read this. You know, he'll go on and talk about who went up and of which families and all that. But in chapter 3 is when we begin it, pick up that story again. And when the 7th month was come, I found that fascinating. When the 7th month was come, the children of Israel were in the cities. The people gathered themselves together as one man to Jerusalem. So now they got themselves together. It's the beginning of the 7th month, and they're going to go to Jerusalem. But they go as one man. They're organized. They're together. They have the same mindset. Then stood up Yahshua, the son of Yozadak, and his brethren the priests, and Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and his brethren, and built the altar of the Elohim of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of Elohim. Okay, and that. So here is what, now remember we're talking about the rebuilding of the temple, and I want to do some types and shadows. Usually when you build a building, you build what is the main thing of the building, because it holds the structure up, is the foundation. You know, Yahweh don't work like that. The main thing for them first in rebuilding a temple is to rebuild the altar. That's first. So when we're looking at this temple, so y'all knew that I was talking about this temple, right? Not only this temple, but the collective temple, again, we'll touch on that as we go in further. This temple first. When this temple has been destroyed, when it's been torn down by whatever circumstance, sin, there is a way that it must be rebuilt. You can't rebuild it any way you choose. It has to be rebuilt the way Yahweh set for it to be rebuilt. So the first thing they do is they build the altar of Elohim of Israel to offer burnt offerings thereon, as it is written in the law of Moses, the man of Elohim. Next verse, 3:3. And they set the altar upon its bases, for fear was upon them because of the people of those countries. And they offered burnt offerings thereon unto Yahweh, even burnt offerings morning and evening. So they set up, and the first thing that they did was they instituted back the perpetual sacrifice of evening and morning sacrifice. This is written in the law of Moses. So I wanted to get another version for verse 3 a little bit. So they rebuilt the altar on its original site. That's what it meant, upon its basis, the place where it was stood originally. They didn't alter anything. They didn't move it and say this is a better area for it. They put it up back on the place where Yahweh had set it to be in Solomon's plan, the plan that was given to David that he passed on to his son. This is the temple that they're restoring. Though they were afraid of the people in the neighboring regions. Now, they're all ruled by Babylon. Now, you're some other foreign country, nation, ruled by Babylon. And here, these Jews are back in their city, rebuilding their temple to their God. I think you might have an issue. So they were afraid. They were afraid that they would, somebody surrounding would come and, try to take over but they did this in spite of their fear. They set up the altar and they began offering the sacrifices unto Yahweh in spite of their fear. When we do a rebuilding and we set up the altar first, now in the natural we got to do things one step at a time. Yahweh don't work like that. There's this collective that happens all at the same time. But we're going to look at the natural. So when I set up the altar, the sacrifices, the evening and the morning sacrifices is established. The first thing that has to happen, though, for this rebuilding of the temple was the word of Yahweh has to come. See, the first thing they did was put the altar up. But before that, the word of Yahweh came. Before that, y'all hear me? The word of Yahweh had to come. The word of Yahweh has to come first. Okay, now they had to wait on a prophecy. Do you? The word of Yahweh has come. He has come. Right? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was, and is, and took on flesh, and dwelt among us. First has to come the Word. The proclamation has to come first. And then those who it's on their heart set up the altar. Not a foundation, an altar of sacrifice. From the first day of the 7th month began they to offer burnt offering unto Yahweh. But the foundation of the temple of Yahweh was not yet laid. See, we like to wait until we get certain things done. But they were already doing the sacrifice daily, that evening and morning sacrifice, before the foundation was yet laid. Now, I know that Yahshua is the foundation. He's the sacrifice. That's that collective thing, that when we do one, it's all like a group together. But here they got to do step by step. Sacrifice first, after the word of Yahweh came. Now they offered on here the burnt offering. That was what the evening and morning sacrifice was to be, a burnt offering. And Leviticus, it says, if his offering be a burnt offering, because there were several offerings. If the offering is a burnt offering, he shall offer it of his own voluntary will at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before Yahweh. This is in Leviticus. So if your offering is a burnt offering, it's voluntary, of your own will. Note what they established first. Their will with Yahweh's will was one. Remember, it said, as one man they came, and the first thing they did was set up that altar and began the evening and the morning sacrifice, which was a burnt offering. Also, the scripture tells us to offer your body a living sacrifice. That's a burnt offering. It has to be done voluntarily. You have to be willing it to do so, or it's not a burnt offering. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple, see, then they went and did the foundation. When they laid the foundation of the temple of Yahweh, they set the priest in their apparel with trumpets, and the Levites, the son of Asaph, with cymbals, to praise Yahweh after the ordinance of David, king of Israel. Now, I know, and some people, you're following me real good because you're familiar with the scripture. And some may not be familiar with all the stories. But not only did David set up a plan, get the plans for the temple proper, the building of a physical temple, because he had the tabernacle in a tent. But David also, because once the tabernacle became stationary, some of the priests were out of work. You know, the ones that had to take up and, move it, they're out of a job. So he set up praisers, people that sang and praised unto Yahweh, dancers, musicians. They were priests. They praised unto Yahweh. So this is what that's talking about. That what they did was, after they laid the foundation of the temple, because remember, some of them that came there who was on their hearts were Levites, priests. They set the priest in their apparel. They got dressed proper, with trumpets, and the Levites, the son of Asaph, with cymbals, to praise Yahweh after the ordinance of David, king of Israel. They began to resume the charge to which they had already been charged. Note, this is a rebuilding. See, they already had their charge. They already knew what they were supposed to do. They already knew their place, but they weren't in their place because they were in captivity. So when they came and began offering the sacrifices, and they laid that foundation, then they got dressed appropriately and took their place, their proper place, the place that they had been called to before the destruction of the temple. And they sang together by course, that means in harmony, and praising and giving thanks unto Yahweh, because he is good, and his mercy endureth forever toward Israel, toward his people, towards spiritual Israel, towards us. And all the people shouted with a great shout. And when they praised Yahweh because the foundation of the house of Yahweh was laid. Now therefore ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints of the household of Elohim, and are built upon the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Yahshua Messiah himself being the chief cornerstone, in whom all the building fitly framed together grows unto an holy temple in Yahweh, in whom ye also are built together for an habitation of Elohim through the Spirit. When I bring and set up the altar or receive the sacrifice has to be on an altar. Granted, the foundation is laid. Like, I'm not really doing, like, they're doing all this physical work. I don't, other than setting up that altar and once I receive that sacrifice, the foundation is laid. It's built upon the prophets and the apostles, which is the word of Yahweh. The word of Yahweh. It came first. And now I am fit. And you're fit. And now together, this is what Ephesians is talking about, that this temple, but now the temple that we are building, that Yahweh is building using us as lively stones, as Peter calls us lively stones, building a habitation for Yahweh. This is a habitation for Yahweh, but we're collectively building a habitation for Yahweh. Yahweh wants to live with us, dwell with us. Nevertheless, the foundation of Elohim stands sure, having this seal: Yahweh knows them that are his, and let everyone that names the name of Messiah depart from iniquity. 2 Timothy. Back to Ezra. Well, before I do that, because I want to insert something. After they were shouting for joy, if you're reading, because I'm not doing it verse by verse, because we'd be here too long. They're shouting for joy, but there are some that are weeping because they remember how grand Solomon's temple was. But I want you to know what Yahweh did, because these young ones that came up on their heart to build this temple, I want you to know what Yahweh did. The shouting was so loud, it drowned out the weepers. That would have discouraged them. That weeping would have discouraged them. So the shouts of joy were so loud, it drowned out the weepers. But the shouts of joy were so loud that the neighbors heard. Ezra chapter 4. Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of captivity were building the temple unto Yahweh, God of Israel, then they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief priests of the fathers, and said unto them, Let us build with you, for we seek your God, as you do. And we do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Ashur, which brought us up hither. But Zerubbabel and Yahshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, You have nothing to do with us to build an house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto Yahweh God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us. Then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in building, and hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem. Right when you're doing good, here comes the enemy. First, he tries to get in with you to make you think you're on the same page, have the same destination, same goal. Right? He said, Oh, yes, we want to help you. We want to help you. We've been offering sacrifices to your God since back in. But Zerubbabel wouldn't have none of it. He said, We're going to build unto our God. See, we got to recognize when foreigners with their foreign gods want to help us build a temple to our God, because it'll be polluted, contaminated. Yahweh doesn't want that. So then after they resisted, what did the enemy try to do after that? Discourage, tried to hinder the work. And where this verse where it says that they got counselors, it meant they, the enemy, got counselors to counsel them on how to discourage you. They went and got them some people, kind of like the Balaam story, to, give us counsel on how we can disrupt this. And it wasn't working, so after a while, they wrote a letter. Now remember, they're all under Babylonian rule. So they wrote a letter to the king at that time about accusing Jerusalem and Judah of some things which we'll look at in a second. Scripture tells us, Be ye not unequally yoked with unbelievers, for what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? See, Yahweh's the same. They couldn't help build the temple then. They can't help build it now. And what communion hath light with darkness? And what arrangement hath the temple of Elohim with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God. As Elohim hath said, I will dwell in them and walk in them, and I will be their Elohim, and they shall be my people. And here in the story, they even do a legal campaign to stop the effort. And thus the letter. This is excerpt of their letter. Be it known unto the king that the Jews which came up from thee to us are come unto Jerusalem, building the rebellious and the bad city, and have set up the walls thereof, and joined the foundations. Be it known now unto the king that if this city be built and the walls set up again, then will they not pay toll, tribute, and custom, and so thou shalt damage the revenue of the king. Now, because we have maintenance from the king's palace, and it was not meet for us to see the king's dishonor, therefore have we sent and certified the king, that search may be made in the book of the records of thy fathers. So shalt thou find in the book of the records, and know that this city is a rebellious city, and hurtful unto kings and providences, and that they have moved sedition within the same of old time, for which cause was this city destroyed. We certify the king that if this city be built again, and the walls thereof set up, by this means thou shalt have no portion on this side of the river. Did you follow that? So they're, telling the king, how wonderful he is, and how if you don't stop this, you're going to lose money, and you need to check history, because history will show these are rebellious people. This is how they got in trouble in the first place. And so, and note, it isn't check the records for what Cyrus's decree, but check the records and see how they have rebelled against other nations that held them, they're just, you got to do something about this. And we certify, King, we swear that, what we're telling you is the truth. The letter which you sent unto us, now this is the king's response back to the people. The letter which you sent unto us has been plainly read before me. I got your letter, and it's been read. And I commanded, and search has been made, and it is found that this city of old time has made insurrection against kings, and that rebellion and sedition have been made therein. So they told the truth. So now we got to see what the king. There have been mighty kings also over Jerusalem, which have ruled over all countries beyond the river, and toll and tribute and custom was paid unto them. See, at one point in Yahweh's favor, Israel ruled, and they had tribute being paid unto them. Give you now commandment to cause these men to cease. So now this is what the king is telling them. I'm giving you a commandment to cause these men to cease, and that this city be not built until another commandment shall be given from me. I'm going to investigate this further, and until you hear from me, I want everything to cease. Take heed now that if you fail not to do this, why should damage grow to the hurt of your kings? It's like, if you don't do what I say, I'm coming after you. Then ceased the work of the house of Elohim, which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased unto the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. That's the end of chapter 4. Okay, so they got it, it was on Cyrus, but you have to, if you're reading, you'll see there have been kings, like Cyrus reigned, and then Darius came in. And so we're talking about a time span. Remember the time span that I gave you in the beginning, that, the proclamation was proclaimed in 538, and 535 is when they went. So it took 3 years for them to get everything together. And the work is stopped in 530. So it was 5 years. They were, working on the temple and doing the things that had to be done. And once that foundation was laid and that cry went out, see, there's something about the cry of the people. Here they heard the cry of the people. I mean, not shouts of joy cry, woohoo, that people hear and they are afraid. Now, 2 or 3 witnesses, let me give you another witness. They were fighting the Philistines and they were losing. So they brought out the ark so they could win. And so when the people saw the ark, the soldiers, they went crazy And the Philistines were afraid because Israel went and got their God. Now, the battle doesn't end well because Israel, but the fact is, when the shouts went up, the enemy was like, step back. Y'all aren't hearing me. When the shouts went up, the enemy stepped back. Right? He was like, oh no, they got their God. Oh no. You know, some of these nations around might not even realize what Israel, Judah was doing until they heard all this noise of praise. We were singing a song earlier, and I just sat on it because Pastor Michael was singing it, when the blessings come down, you know, when the praises go up, the blessings come down, and it was so quiet in here. And I'm thinking, they must not want much from Yahweh. They're all quiet. Or maybe they weren't listening to the song. It said when the praises go up, the blessings come down. You want blessings to come down, the praises got to go up. And when it does, the enemy steps back. He steps back. So let's pick this up in chapter 5. Then the prophets, Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the Elohim of Israel, even unto them. Now, if you're in your scripture, the next verse says, then Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Yahshua set to work to rebuild the house of Elohim. Doesn't say anything about prophecy, but it did say that they prophesied. So this is where I'm going to get Sister Denise to get in her chronological Bible, read Ezra, because this is where we go to Haggai. Same, that's the prophet. The book of Haggai, that's the prophecy that was done right here. So what does Haggai say? In the second year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the first day of the month, came the word of Yahweh by Haggai the prophet unto Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Yahshua, the son of Zedekiah, the high priest, saying, Thus speaks Yahweh of hosts, saying, This people say, the time is not come, the time that Yahweh's house should be built. Then came the word of Yahweh by Haggai the prophet, saying, It is time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lies waste. Now, he's obviously in proximity of the temple. It's not finished. It's not finished. Now, therefore, thus saith Yahweh of hosts, consider your ways. Ye have sown much and bring in little. Y'all hearing me? You have sown much and bring in little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. You clothe yourselves, but there is none warm. And he that earns wages to put it into bags with holes. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith Yahweh. What's happening? I want you to first know it's 10 years later. 10 years. Now the people ceased building the temple. But what were they doing? What did Haggai say? You're building up your own house. You're living in a nice house. But look at my house. You forgot the mission, the purpose, the decree of Cyrus that I put on his heart, that you should build a temple unto me for my glory. And you allowed the enemy to come in and stop the work. And now you got busy doing your own thing. Doing your own thing. Let me tell you, it comes with a warning. If you're going to keep doing that, everything you set your hand to do will fail. You're going to eat and never have enough. You're never going to be satisfied with drink. Oh, how isn't it fascinating that Yahshua's parables, his stories talking about bread. And if you eat this bread, you'll never be hungry again. And if you drink this drink, you'll never thirst again. But here it says everything you do, the sowing you do for food, you will never have enough. The drink that you drink will never be enough. You'll never have cloth enough to clothe yourself to warmth. You'll be clothed, but you won't be warm. And the money the job you go to and the money you make will be like putting it into pockets with holes. Because what? You neglected the temple of Yahweh to build your own house. So Yahweh tells him, go up into the mountain and bring wood and build the house, and I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith Yahweh. If you're following me in Haggai, I'm now at verse 12. Then Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Joshua, the high priest, with all the remnant of the people, the same remnant that came out all those years ago, obeyed the voice of Yahweh their God and the words of Haggai the prophet, as Yahweh their God had sent him, and the people did fear before Yahweh. They succumbed to the enemy, but now their fear was in the right place. They feared Yahweh. Then spoke Haggai, Yahweh's messenger, in Yahweh's message unto the people, saying, I am with you, saith Yahweh. They didn't have to be afraid of the people. I am with you. And Yahweh stirred up the spirit of Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, and the spirit of Joshua, the high priest, and the spirit of all the remnant of the people, and they came and did the work in the house of Yahweh of hosts, their God. Okay. What happened? I think it said that same thing in verse 5 of the first chapter. All that went up already had been stirred up in the spirit, in their hearts. And then they lost it along the way. And Yahweh restored it, put the hunger in them again, put the desire in them again. And then they did the work. Don't let setbacks cause you to quit. We're talking about rebuilding the house of Yahweh. Back in Ezra. Then rose up Zerubbabel. See, we had to put Haggai in there. Because first verse of chapter 5 says, there came a prophecy, and then rose up Zerubbabel in verse 2. But what was the prophecy? We just read it in Haggai. After Haggai hears this and his spirit has been renewed and regenerated again to do the thing that was set in him years ago, he rises up and begin to build the house of Elohim, which is at Jerusalem. And with them were the prophets of Elohim helping them. At the same time came to them Tatniah, governor on this side of the river, and their companions, and said thus unto them, was like immediately, here come conflict, here come discouragement, here come questions. Who said you could do this? Who hath commanded you to build this house and make up this wall? Who gave you the okay? Remember the letter that was sent. And then the response from the king was, don't let them do anything until you hear from me. Yahweh intervened and told his people, you do what I said to do. And they didn't wait for no okay from no king. They set out to obey their king. So now they're getting questioned. Who has given you authority? Who has commanded you to build this house? Let's go back, step back to the end of chapter 4. Then ceased the work of the house of Elohim, which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased unto the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. Note, these prophets, Ezra, Haggai, Zerubbabel, they give us a lot of detail, okay? It said when it ceased in the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, it ceased unto the reign of the 2nd year of King Darius. And here, where was the prophet? Haggai said, in the 2nd year of King Darius, in the 6th month, he got this prophecy. I went into another translation because I like it a little better. For chapter 4, verse 24, I want to reread that verse about the work. Thus the work on the house of Elohim in Jerusalem came to a standstill until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of Persia. Okay, so King James said it ceased. NIV said came to a standstill. See, according to the world, the work ceased. But it just came to a standstill. Stand still. Stand still and see. It just came to a standstill. And all the people had to do was stand still and see. And they began to see. Back in chapter 5, verse 3. At the same time came to them this Tatniah, and he questions them about who has given you this authority. Right away, got this conflict. And he says, then said we unto them after this manner. Because he also wanted to know their names. What are all your names? It made me think of kids. I want all your names so I can tell everybody that's doing this. But this is their response to them. Then said we unto them after this manner, we are the names of the, what are the names? This is them questioning. What are the names of the men that make this building? But the eyes of their God was upon the elders of the Jews, that they could not cause them to cease, till the matter came to Darius, And then they returned answer by letter concerning this matter. So again, they questioned, and now we're doing another letter, tattletelling. We asked them who their names was. They wouldn't tell us, But note verse 5. But the eyes of their God was upon them, upon the elders, that they could not cause them to cease. Remember, before, it caused them to cease. Now this accusation, knowing what you're all going to do, doesn't matter. You're not going to cause me to cease. See, I've been regenerated. I got that vim and vigor. Yahweh has reconfirmed his word in me, and I am set. I got it now. I got it. And Yahweh, forgive me that I failed yesterday, but guess what? I'm getting up today, and ain't nothing going to stop this thing today. Here is a copy of the letter. I want you to know I'm still reading in Ezra chapter 5. This is what Ezra said. Here's a copy of the letter that the governor sent to the king. Now he's sending the letter to King Darius. And they sent him the following report. To King Darius, we wish you peace and prosperity in everything you do. Your Majesty should know that we went to the province of Judah, to the temple of the great God. The temple is being built with large stones and with wooden beams laid in its walls. The builders are doing an excellent job and making rapid progress. That's what they said. We asked the leaders the following question: who gave you permission to rebuild this temple and to finish its walls? For your information, we also asked them for their names so that we would have a record of the men who were their leaders. This was their reply to us: we are the servants of the God of heaven and earth. We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth. We are rebuilding the temple that was originally built many years ago by a great king of Israel. We are the servants of the God of heaven and earth. See, if you look in a lot of the Psalms of David and through a lot of the remembrances, they're all remember the God who delivered us from Egypt. And we've, typed and shadowed that. But if that's not your ancestry, because it's most of us, it's not our ancestry. He didn't deliver us from Egypt. And if you look in the New Testament, it says, the God of heaven and earth. But here I am in Ezra, and he said, we are the children, the servants of the God of heaven and earth. We are rebuilding the temple that was originally built many years ago by a great king. When we first came in, remember, I'm talking about rebuilding. When we first came in, Yah built a house. A great king built a house and came and inhabited it. And for whatever circumstances, it became desolate. And I'm rebuilding a house because I am a servant of the God of heaven and earth. And this temple was built by a great king. But because our ancestors made the God of heaven angry, but because of my sin, because of my shortcoming, because of my failure, he handed them over to Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, a Chaldean, I fell into captivity of my sin. So Nebuchadnezzar destroyed this temple and deported its people to Babylon. However, in the first year of the reign of King Cyrus of Babylon, Cyrus gave permission for Yah's temple to be rebuilt. In addition, Cyrus took out of a temple in Babylon the gold and silver utensils that belonged to Yahweh's temple. Nebuchadnezzar had taken them out of Yahweh's temple in Jerusalem and brought them into a temple in Babylon. Cyrus gave them to a man who he made governor of Judah. Cyrus told him, "Take these utensils, place them in the temple in Jerusalem, rebuild Yah's temple on its original site." Yahweh didn't move. He's rebuilding on the original site. Then Sheshbazzar laid the foundation of God's temple in Jerusalem. The temple has been under construction from that time till now, but it still isn't finished. Remember, there's been a 10-year lapse. Although according to what's going on now, they're working speedily, and it's good. It's a good work. It's looking good, and they're making good time. If it please your majesty, allow someone to search the king's archives in Babylon to determine whether King Cyrus gave permission for the temple of Elohim to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. Then please send us your majesty's decision on this matter. Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house of the rolls, the scrolls, where the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And there was found in the palace that is in the province of the Medes a roll, and therein was a record thus written: "In the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house be built, the place where they offered sacrifice, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid, the height thereof 80 cubits, and the breadth thereof 80 cubits, with 3 rows of great stones and a row of new timber, and let the expanses be given out of the king's house," the expenses out of the king's house. "And also let the golden and the silver vessels of the house of God, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple which is at Jerusalem and brought unto Babylon, be restored and brought again into the temple which is at Jerusalem, every one to his place, and place them in the house of Elohim. Now therefore, Tatniah, governor beyond the river, and your companions which are beyond the river, be ye far from thence. Let the work of this house of Elohim alone. Let the governor of the Jews and the elders of the Jews build this house of God in his place. Moreover, I make a decree what ye shall do to the elders of these Jews for the building of this house of God, that of the king's goods, even of the tribute beyond the river, forthwith expenses be given unto these men, that they be not hindered. If Yahweh is for you, who can be against you?" If Yah be for you, they meant to do the same thing that they did 10 years ago. But now come a decree. Not only is what they said to you the truth, but now here's what you're to do. You leave them alone. And then the tribute that comes from you to me, you give to them. And that which they have need of, both young bullocks and rams and lambs, and for the for the burnt offering of the God of heaven, wheat, salt, wine, and oil, according to the appointment of the priests which are at Jerusalem. Let it be given them day by day without fail. This is Yahweh working through a foreign king, telling people who are your enemy to give you what you need to worship Yahweh, that they may offer sacrifices of sweet savor unto the God of heaven, and pray for the life of the king and of his sons. I need them to intercede for me. So I want you to give them what they need, because they got the main line to the God of heaven and earth. Also I have made a decree that whosoever shall alter this word, let timber be pulled down from his house, and being set up, let him be hanged thereon, and let his house be made a dunghill for this. If you alter any part of this word, remember it had to travel. This is what will happen to you. I will destroy you. I will come and destroy your house and hang you in it. Then, and the God that hath caused his name to dwell there destroy all kings and people that shall be put to their hand to alter and to destroy this house of God, which is at Jerusalem. I, Darius, have made a decree. Let it be done with speed. Then Tantaniah, governor of this side of the river, and his companions, according to that which Darius the king had sent, so they did speedily. And the elders of the Jews builded, and they prospered through the prophesying of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah the son of Iddo. Remember, after the 10 years, the word came. And they built and finished it according to the commandment of the God of Israel, and according to the commandment of Cyrus and Darius and Axarius, king of Persia. And this house was finished on the 3rd day of the month Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of Darius the king. And the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the children of the captivity, kept the dedication of this house of Elohim with joy, and offered at the dedication of this house of Elohim 100 bullocks, 200 rams, 400 lambs, and for a sin offering for all Israel, 12 he-goats, according to the number of the tribes of Israel. And they set the priests in their divisions, and the Levites in their courses, for the service of Elohim, which is at Jerusalem, as it is written in the book of Moses. I want you to see, the temple had been built, and then because of the sin of the people, Yahweh allowed it to come and be destroyed. And then he began a restoration. And then the people in the midst of the restoration stopped and began their own work about their own self. But Yahweh had not forsaken them, and they were rejuvenated again with a new word coming to restore again. And they picked up the work again, and Yahweh blessed them even greater than the first time. And the children of the captivity kept the Passover upon the 14th day of the first month. Fascinatingly, they started in the 7th month, and so many years later, they ended in the first month. For the priests and the Levites were purified together, and all of them were pure, and killed the Passover for all the children of the captivity, and for their brethren, the priests, and for themselves. And the children of Israel, which were come again out of the captivity, and all such as had separated themselves unto them from the filthiness of the heathen of the land, to seek Yahweh, the God of Israel, did eat, and kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy. For Yahweh had made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of Elohim and the Elohim of Israel. They praised Yahweh because they knew it was Yahweh that moved on the heart of that king. because he was not for them. He was their enemy, but it was Yahweh, and they knew that. And so they gave Yahweh joy. Now I'm going to close with this one thing. I know it was a little bit long, but I hope you've been blessed. And Ezra 3, 12 through 13 was that part that I skipped in the reading. But that was where those that had known the former temple, that were old enough to have seen Solomon's temple, they wept instead of rejoicing, because they were comparing this new with what the glory of Solomon's temple. Now, if you can read, Solomon's temple was fabulous. It was definitely a great wonder of the world. It was magnificent, no doubt about it. But I didn't read all of Haggai's prophecies, so I want to interject, because Haggai, Yahweh does address that weeping that they did. He does address that. In the 7th month, and the 21st day of the month, came the word of Yahweh by the prophet Haggai, saying, "Speak now to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the high priest, and to the residue of the people, saying, Who is left among you that saw this house in her first glory? Who is here that remembers Solomon's temple? And how do you see it now?" Like this one that we've just finished, in comparison to that one. How do you see it? Is it not in your eyes in comparison as nothing? Like compared to Solomon's temple, this temple that was built now, it really falls short of grandeur. Functionality, definitely, but of grandeur. "Yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, saith Yahweh, and be strong, O Joshua, the high priest, and be strong, all ye people of the land, saith Yahweh, and work. For I am with you, saith Yahweh of hosts. According to the word that I covenant with you when you came out of Egypt, so my spirit remains among you. Fear ye not. For thus saith Yahweh of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land. And I will shake all nations, and the desire of all nations shall come. And I will fill this house with glory, saith Yahweh of hosts. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith Yahweh of hosts. The glory of this latter house shall be greater than that of the former, saith Yahweh of hosts. And in this place will I give peace, saith Yahweh of hosts. This house, although it may not look like much, Yahweh said he's going to fill it with his glory. Remember the scriptures that we read in Ephesians, and Peter talks about us being built to be a habitation for Yahweh to come and live. This is a house being built where Yahweh comes and abides. I don't know about you, but the God of heaven and earth doesn't just move into any old place. He doesn't just move into any old place. It's a place where his glory can be manifested. We're looking at stuff that's irrelevant. Do the rebuilding if you need to rebuild according to the pattern. Set up your altar. Begin offering your sacrifices. Put yourself sacrifice daily. Daily. It's an evening and a morning sacrifice daily, a burnt offering, voluntary of your own free will unto Yahweh. And then he will lay the foundation. And once that foundation is laid, there is nothing that can withstand you, nothing that can come up against you. And should you succumb, should you give in, should you allow the enemy to cease, hear the word of Yahweh. Hear the word of Yahweh and put up an altar. Hear the word of Yahweh. The foundation is laid. It doesn't matter. The stubble of the house might have been demolished, but the foundation is laid. Hear the word of Yahweh. And then do it. Note, they heard the word of Yahweh. And what does verse 2 say in Ezra 6? And Zerubbabel and them got up and did the word of Yahweh. I want you all to be hearing this, because this is the second time you're hearing it today. Yahweh said, do what he says. Whatever that is, do what he says. This is how the house is to be built. The tabernacle was given, and Moses' instructions were, build it exactly as I said. Solomon was given the temple and the dedication of it, but it had to be followed. That blueprint that David got, he got from Yahweh. You can't build this other than the plan that Yahweh has set, or it won't work. If you're thinking foundation needs to be laid, and you're thinking foundation, the word of Yahweh, and you need to put all that word and get knowledge in the word of Yahweh, that's not the right foundation. And that's not what he said to do. He said, put me up an altar and offer your sacrifices. Hear the word of Yahweh. Hear the word of Yahweh.
Good is the word, amen.